Is World War III about to start in the Middle East? Why have Iran, Israel, and the United States come face to face? If this war escalates further, its impact will not remain limited to the Middle East, but will affect the entire world's economy, energy, supply, and future. What is Iran's plan regarding the Strait of Hormuz? But the story of this conflict is not from today. Its roots go back to the creation of Israel in 1948 and the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Today, the situation has become so dangerous that major cities like Tehran and Isfahan have already been targeted. And in response, Iran is also launching missile attacks. But now the biggest question is, will this war remain limited only to the Middle East? Why is the Middle East so important? Why does Iran avoid direct war, but instead puts pressure on Israel and the United States through its proxy groups? Could major global powers like Russia, China, and NATO also become involved in this conflict in the future? In today's video, we will understand the complete story of the Middle East conflict from its beginning to the present day. The story begins around the year 1900. The area that is now known as Israel and Palestine was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. At that time, most of the people living there were Arab Muslims and Christians, but a small number of Jews also lived in this region. During that period, many Jewish people living in different parts of the world began to feel that they needed a country where they could live safely and preserve their identity. From this idea, a political and social movement began called Zionism. The main goal of this movement was to create a country for Jewish people where they could live with their national identity. Then, between 1914 and 1918, World War I took place. After this war, the Ottoman Empire became weak and eventually collapsed. After that, control of this entire region came into the hands of the United Kingdom. Britain took over the administration of this region, and the area became known as the British Mandate for Palestine. This meant that Palestine was now directly under British administration. During the 1930s and 1940s, persecution against Jews in Europe increased dramatically, especially during the rule of Adolf Hitler. A horrific event known as the Holocaust took place, in which about 6 million Jews were killed. This genocide shocked the entire world. After this, a large number of Jewish people began leaving Europe and moving to Palestine because they hoped they could build a safe future there. However, this made the situation in Palestine even more complicated. Now, two major communities existed there. On one side, the Arab population that had already been living there, and on the other side, the rapidly increasing Jewish immigrants. Both groups wanted to make this land their own country. Because of this, tensions and conflicts between the two communities began to grow, and violent clashes started in many places. Britain was unable to control the situation. Finally, in 1947, the issue was brought to the United Nations. After this, the United Nations proposed a solution called the United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine. According to this plan, it was proposed that Palestine be divided into two separate countries, one Jewish state and one Arab state. It was also suggested that Jerusalem be made an international city. After this, on the 14th of May 1948, Jewish leader David Ben-Gurion announced in Tel Aviv that a new country had been established. With this declaration, Israel officially became an independent country. But as soon as this announcement was made, tensions in the Middle East increased even more. Just one day after the creation of Israel, several Arab countries jointly attacked Israel. These included Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. This conflict is known in history as the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The war continued for about 1 year and finally ended in 1949. However, the results were very significant. After the war, Israel expanded the territory under its control. On the other hand, around 700,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homes and had to take refuge in other areas. Palestinians call this event the Nakba, which means catastrophe. For them, it was not just a war, but a tragic event of losing their homes and land. In this way, the creation of Israel in 1948 was not just the establishment of a new country, but the beginning of a geopolitical story in the Middle East whose impact can still be seen today in Gaza, Iran, and the politics and conflicts of the entire Middle East. Look, today Iran and Israel may be considered each other's biggest enemies, but there was also a time when relations between the two countries were quite good. When Israel was created in 1948, many Arab countries in the Middle East opposed Israel. But Iran was not among those countries. At that time, Iran was ruled by Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was known as the Shah of Iran. The Shah's government was considered close to Western countries, and it had good relations with the United States and several European nations. Because of this, good diplomatic and economic relations were also maintained between Iran and Israel. At that time, Iran supplied oil to Israel, and there was also trade, intelligence cooperation, and security cooperation between the two countries. In the Middle East, there were many Arab nationalist governments that opposed Israel, so Iran and Israel became strategic partners in a way. However, this situation did not last for very long. In the late 1970s, political and social dissatisfaction inside Iran began to grow rapidly. The Shah's government was facing accusations of dictatorship, economic inequality was increasing, and many religious leaders were unhappy with the Shah's policies. Gradually, this dissatisfaction turned into a major movement. In 1979, a massive revolution took place in Iran, which is known as the Iranian Revolution. After this revolution, the Shah's government collapsed, and power in Iran came into the hands of a religious leader, Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini declared Iran an Islamic republic and completely changed the country's foreign policy. The new Iranian government refused to recognize Israel as a legitimate state. They believed that Israel had been created on Palestinian land and that it should not exist. Khomeini called Israel a Zionist regime and openly began opposing it. Along with this, Iran ended all its diplomatic relations with Israel. The Israeli embassy in Tehran was closed and handed over to a Palestinian organization. After this, instead of directly going to war with Israel, Iran adopted a different strategy. Iran began supporting several organizations in the Middle East that fight against Israel. These included groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran started providing these groups with financial support, weapons, and training so they could put pressure on Israel. This strategy is often called a proxy war, because in it, a country does not fight directly, but instead uses other organizations to fight against its enemy. On the other hand, Israel also began to see Iran as one of its biggest threats. Israel feared that Iran could develop nuclear weapons and expand its influence in the Middle East, which could become a serious threat to Israel's security. Because of this, tensions between the two countries continued to increase. Many times Israel carried out secret operations and cyber attacks to stop Iran's nuclear program, while Iran continued to pressure Israel through its proxy groups. In this way, after the Iranian Revolution of 1979, the relationship between Iran and Israel changed completely. The countries that were once allies gradually became some of the biggest rivals in the Middle East. The tensions and conflicts that are seen in the Middle East today have their roots to a large extent in this period, and this rivalry has continued to influence the politics and wars of the entire region. In the 1970s, the Middle East was already full of conflicts and wars, but in 1982, a war began that completely changed the politics of the entire region. This war was between Israel and Lebanon. After this war, a new militant group emerged that later became Israel's biggest enemy. But the real story behind this was connected to the Palestine Liberation Organization. In the early 1970s, a major conflict took place between Jordan and the PLO, which is known in history as Black September. After this conflict, the government of Jordan expelled the PLO from the country. After that, thousands of PLO fighters moved to Lebanon and established their bases in southern Lebanon. From these bases, rockets were fired at Israel and attacks were carried out on border villages. Israel said that its northern border was constantly under threat, but at that time, Lebanon itself was going through a major crisis. In 1975, a civil war had started there, and the country had been divided into several different factions. Because of this, the Lebanese government had become so weak that it was unable to stop these militant groups. Gradually, the southern region of Lebanon came completely under the control of the PLO, and people began calling it Fatahland. Then, on the 3rd of June 1982, Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Shlomo Argov, was attacked in London. This attack was carried out by a Palestinian militant group called the Abu Nidal Organization. Although this group was a rival of the PLO, Israel held the PLO responsible in response and began preparing a major military operation against PLO bases in Lebanon. On the 6th of June 1982, Israel launched a major military operation in Lebanon. The operation was called Operation Peace for Galilee. Thousands of Israeli soldiers, tanks, and fighter jets crossed the border into Lebanon. Within a few days, Israel captured large parts of southern Lebanon and destroyed many PLO bases. But Israel did not stop there. Its army continued advancing and eventually reached Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. After this, the most dangerous phase of the war began. Israel surrounded the city of Beirut from all sides. Continuous airstrikes, artillery bombardments, and street fighting began in the city. For several weeks, Beirut became a massive battlefield. During this time, thousands of civilians were killed, and a large part of the city was destroyed. Images of the destruction in Beirut began spreading through media around the world, and international pressure started increasing. Eventually, under international pressure, an agreement was reached. Under this agreement, the fighters of the Palestine Liberation Organization had to leave Beirut. Their leader, Yasser Arafat, and thousands of fighters boarded ships and left Lebanon, and they were sent to Tunisia and other countries. But the most tragic event of the war was still yet to come. In September 1982, a horrific massacre took place in the Sabra and Shatila refugee camps in Beirut. A Lebanese Christian militia entered the camps and killed hundreds of Palestinians, including many women and children. This incident shocked the entire world. Israel was accused that its army was present nearby but did nothing to stop the massacre. Eventually, the War of 1982 came to an end. But after this, a new militant group emerged in the Middle East, Hezbollah. This organization was formed in Lebanon and received support from Iran. In the years that followed, Hezbollah became Israel's most dangerous enemy, and this conflict eventually led to several more major wars in the Middle East. Then in 2006, a major war took place between Hezbollah, a Lebanese Shia organization, and Israel. This war began in July 2006, when Hezbollah attacked Israel's border and captured several soldiers. After this, Israel launched a response and began large-scale air and ground attacks in Lebanon. Both sides suffered heavy losses in the war. Thousands of people were killed, and millions were displaced. The main causes of this war were border disputes, political tensions, and terrorism. Hezbollah fired missiles at Israel, while Israel targeted Lebanon's infrastructure. This conflict lasted for about 34 days and was later called the July War. At the end of the war, with mediation by the United Nations, both sides agreed to stop the fighting, but tensions between the two countries did not completely end. Tensions between the two countries continued. This war between Lebanon and Israel was a conflict that demonstrated power and political pressure, and it affected the security situation of the entire Middle East region. At the end of 2008, tensions in the Gaza Strip were at their peak. Hamas, which governs Gaza, was continuously firing rockets into Israeli areas. Israel said that this was a threat to the safety of its citizens. After months of failed efforts, both sides entered into direct war. Then, on the 27th of December 2008, Israel carried out large-scale airstrikes on Gaza. In the first 2 days alone, thousands of missiles were fired at Hamas bases, tunnels, and weapons depots. Destruction spread across the streets of Gaza, and an atmosphere of fear spread among ordinary people. After that, starting on the 3rd of January 2009, Israel launched a ground operation. Soldiers were targeting Hamas bases and tunnel networks. During this time, there were heavy civilian casualties. Many homes, schools, and hospitals were also damaged. Around 1,400 people were killed in Gaza, while in Israel, about 13 soldiers and some civilians were killed. Gaza's infrastructure was severely affected. Electricity, water, and hospitals were shut down. Then, on the 18th of January 2009, both sides agreed to a ceasefire. Hamas promised to stop missile attacks, and Israel continued its blockade on Gaza's borders. But tensions at the border still remained. This war was not just a battle, but a conflict involving politics, security, and human rights. It had a heavy impact on the civilians of Gaza, and regional tensions remained for a long time. After this, in 2014, the situation between the Gaza Strip and Israel was very tense. Both sides were already involved in clashes along the border. Things worsened when, in June 2014, 3 Israeli teenagers were kidnapped and killed. Israel linked this to Hamas, and in response it began operations in the West Bank and Gaza. Tensions continued to rise, and the path toward war opened. On the 8th of July 2014, Israel began airstrikes on Gaza. They targeted Hamas rocket launching sites, weapons depots, and tunnels. In the first few weeks, hundreds of missile attacks took place. Massive destruction occurred in Gaza. Homes, roads, electricity, and water supplies were affected. Ordinary people were left living in fear and panic. Starting from the 17th of July 2014, Israel launched a ground attack. Soldiers moved toward Hamas bases and tunnel networks. During this time, there were heavy civilian casualties. Many families' homes were destroyed, and schools and hospitals were also affected. People were forced to live in the middle of destruction and fear. Around 2,100 people were killed in Gaza, most of them ordinary civilians. In Israel, about 70 people were killed, including soldiers and civilians. Gaza's infrastructure was severely affected. Electricity, water, hospitals, homes, and markets were destroyed. Millions of people became homeless, and the humanitarian crisis deepened. Then, on the 26th of August 2014, both sides agreed to a ceasefire. Hamas promised to stop missile attacks, and Israel kept strict monitoring on Gaza's borders. However, tensions and political disputes along the border still continued. After this, on the 7th of October 2023, the Palestinian organization Hamas suddenly carried out a major attack on Israel. Thousands of rockets were fired, and many fighters crossed the border and entered Israeli cities and villages. In this attack, more than 1,200 people were killed, and many people were taken hostage and brought to Gaza. This attack is considered one of the largest attacks in Israel's history. After this attack, Israel immediately declared war and began heavy airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Israel said that its goal was to completely eliminate Hamas. Many buildings, tunnels, and military bases in Gaza were destroyed in the bombings. A few weeks later, the Israeli army entered Gaza, and ground fighting began. Here, Israeli forces faced Hamas fighters who were fighting while hiding in tunnels and densely populated areas. Because of this, the battle became very difficult and prolonged. The greatest impact of this war was on ordinary people. Thousands of people were killed in Gaza, and millions of people were forced to leave their homes and seek shelter. There were also severe shortages of electricity, water, and food. Many countries and organizations describe this as a major humanitarian crisis. During this war, the world appeared divided into two sides. The United States and some Western countries supported Israel, while many Muslim countries and organizations supported Palestine. The United Nations and many countries repeatedly appealed for a ceasefire. This war began in 2023 and continued in different phases through 2024, 2025. At times, temporary ceasefires were implemented so that hostages could be released and humanitarian aid could be delivered. The roots of this conflict are very old. The dispute between Israel and Palestine over land, borders, and rights has been going on for almost 70 years. Gaza is controlled by Hamas, while Israel considers it a threat to its security. When on the 1st of April 2024, Israel carried out an airstrike on the Iranian embassy compound in Damascus. In this attack, several senior commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were killed. Iran considered this an attack on its sovereignty and openly said that it would definitely take revenge. This incident later laid the foundation for a direct confrontation between Israel and Iran. Then, on the night of the 13th of April 2024, Iran launched a major direct military attack on Israel for the first time. Iran launched more than 300 weapons at once, including around 170 drones, about 30 cruise missiles, and around 120 ballistic missiles. The attack lasted for several hours, and these weapons were launched not only from Iran but also from areas in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen to put greater pressure on Israel's security system. In the history of the Middle East, this was the first time that Iran directly targeted Israeli territory. When the attack began, Israel's military immediately went on full alert. Israel used its strong air defense systems, such as Iron Dome, David's Sling, and the Arrow missile defense system. In addition, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Jordan also helped Israel. Fighter jets and defense systems from these countries shot down many missiles and drones in the sky. Iran had launched hundreds of weapons, but Israel and its allies had such strong defense systems that about 99% of the missiles and drones were destroyed before reaching their targets. Even so, some ballistic missiles managed to reach Israel and caused minor damage to the Nevatim airbase in southern Israel. Some buildings were slightly damaged and a girl was injured, but there was no major damage. After this attack, the world feared that a major war could begin in the Middle East. Therefore, many countries appealed to both sides to maintain peace. Despite this, on the 19th of April 2024, Israel carried out a retaliatory strike by targeting a military base and an air defense system near Isfahan inside Iran. This attack was limited and small, and its purpose was only to warn Iran that if it attacks, Israel also has the capability to respond. The biggest significance of this entire incident was that for the first time in the history of the Middle East, Iran and Israel were directly attacking each other. Earlier, both countries usually fought through other countries or organizations, but in 2024, this conflict came out openly. After this incident, tensions across the region increased even more, and the world began to fear that if the situation worsened further, it could turn into a major regional war. And that is exactly what happened. In 2026, tensions in the Middle East increased significantly. The main reason was Iran's nuclear program and concerns about Israel's security. Israel feared that if Iran developed nuclear weapons, it could become a major threat. Because of this, Israel started several military and covert operations against Iran. The United States was also supporting Israel, so the presence of the American military increased in many areas of the Persian Gulf and the Middle East. Because of this, the entire region began to look like a war zone. In 2026, Israel and the United States put pressure on Iran and carried out attacks in several different ways. The first method was airstrikes, in which fighter jets targeted some of Iran's military bases, weapons depots, and missile bases. The second method was drone strikes, in which unmanned drones were used to attack military bases from a distance. The third method was cyber attacks, in which attempts were made to hack or disable Iran's computer networks, military systems, and systems connected to its nuclear program in order to weaken its military capability. The fourth method was secret operations, in which attempts were made through intelligence agencies to target Iran's weapons program and military officials. The fifth method was naval pressure, in which America deployed aircraft carriers, warships, and submarines in the Persian Gulf to create military pressure on Iran. The sixth method was economic pressure, in which efforts were made to impose new sanctions on Iran and limit its oil trade. In response to all these actions, Iran also took several steps. Iran launched ballistic missiles and attack drones toward Israel, and also warned American military bases present in the Middle East. In addition, Iran activated its allied organizations. Hezbollah in Lebanon started rocket attacks on northern areas of Israel and targeted ships in the Red Sea and fired missiles toward Israel. In Iraq and Syria, Iran-backed militias carried out drone and rocket attacks on American military bases. In 2026, the biggest threat emerged at sea. The Strait of Hormuz is the most important oil route in the world, through which about 20% of the world's oil trade passes. Iran warned that if major attacks were carried out against it, it could close this route. But now Iran has completely closed this route. And because of this, America and its allies have deployed a large number of naval ships in this region. This has increased concerns around the world about oil prices and global trade. In this video, from the beginning until now, the entire story you have heard is the root of this whole war. But seeing the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, such as tensions between Israel, Iran, and the United States, UAE, Qatar, and Tehran, many people are asking whether this war will remain limited to the Middle East or spread across the world. Right now, apart from Israel, the USA, and Iran, a direct war has already started among more than 5 countries, and the situation has become very serious. This is because several militia groups in the Middle East are connected with Iran, and Israel receives support from the USA. This has expanded the scope of the war significantly. The biggest danger will occur if major countries such as Russia, China, India, or Germany directly enter the war. If that happens, it could grow from a regional war into a global crisis. For now, most people believe that this conflict is more likely to remain limited around the Middle East. Major countries usually try to prevent the situation from turning into a world war because it would have a massive impact on the entire world's economy and security. The Middle East is a very important region of the world that is located between Asia, Europe, and Africa. This region includes many important countries, such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Israel, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. This region has been a center of history, trade, religion, and politics for thousands of years. That is why whenever a major crisis or war happens in the world, the Middle East is often mentioned. The first and biggest reason is oil and gas. The Middle East has a very large share of the world's oil reserves. In the modern world, cars, ships, airplanes, factories, and many industries depend on oil and gas. Therefore, when any problem or war occurs in countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, or Iraq, oil prices rise across the world, and this affects the economies of many countries. This is why major world powers always keep a close watch on the politics of the Middle East. The second major reason is its geographical location. The Middle East is located between 3 continents, so several important maritime trade routes pass through this region. For example, the Strait of Hormuz is a sea route through which a large portion of the world's oil tankers pass. Similarly, the Suez Canal is the shortest sea route connecting Asia and Europe. If any problem occurs on these routes, global trade can be affected. That is why these places are considered strategically very important. The importance of the Middle East is also very high because of religion. 3 of the world's major religions began here: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Mecca and Medina are the holiest cities in Islam, where millions of Muslims travel every year for Hajj. Meanwhile, Jerusalem is a sacred city for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Because of this, religion and politics sometimes clash here, which keeps tensions present in this region. From a historical perspective, the Middle East is also very special because some of the world's earliest civilizations developed here. In ancient times, the Mesopotamian civilization existed here, which is considered the first major civilization in human history. Agriculture, the building of cities, laws, and the art of writing began here. That is why many historians also call the Middle East the birthplace of human civilization. In modern times, the Middle East has also become a center of global politics. Major world powers such as the United States, Russia, and China want to maintain their influence in this region. The reasons include oil, trade routes, and military strategy. Foreign military bases have also been established in several countries, and many times the politics of major powers also influence the conflicts in this region. However, there is another side of the Middle East. This region has long been known for conflicts and wars. In the past few decades, several major wars have taken place here, such as the Iran-Iraq War, the Gulf War, the Iraq War, and the recent Israel-Hamas War. Because of these wars, the politics and security of this region always remain in discussion. But in this war, America is playing a major role. The United States and Israel have very strong political and military relations. Because of this, whenever tensions increase between Iran and Israel, the United States often supports Israel. There are several major reasons behind this, including security, politics, oil, and the balance of global power. The biggest reason is Iran's nuclear program. The United States and Israel fear that if Iran develops nuclear weapons, the balance of power in the Middle East could change completely. If Iran possesses nuclear weapons, it could become a direct threat to Israel's security, and other countries in the region might also try to develop nuclear weapons. Therefore, for many years the United States has been trying to stop Iran's nuclear program through economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and sometimes warnings of military action. The second major reason is the long-standing friendship and strategic partnership between Israel and the United States. In the Middle East, Israel is considered the most reliable ally of the United States. The United States provides Israel with billions of dollars in military aid every year, and also supplies modern weapons, technology, and intelligence information. For example, the United States also played a major role in developing Israel's famous missile defense system, Iron Dome. Therefore, if Israel faces a threat from Iran, the United States often stands in its defense. The third reason is the oil and trade routes of the Middle East. A very large share of the world's oil reserves is located in this region, and much of the world depends on this oil. The Strait of Hormuz is a sea route through which a large number of the world's oil tankers pass. If conflict increases between Iran and Western countries, this route could be threatened, and it could affect the global economy. Therefore, the United States wants to maintain its military and political presence in this region. Another reason is that Iran supports several organizations that fight against Israel. These include groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. The United States and Israel believe that Iran provides these groups with money, weapons, and training, which increases tension and conflict in the Middle East. Therefore, both countries try to limit Iran's influence. Finally, this issue is also connected to global power and politics. The Middle East is considered the most strategic region in the world. If Iran becomes very powerful and the influence of the United States decreases, then the influence of countries such as Russia and China could increase in this region. Therefore, the United States wants to maintain a strong position in the Middle East, and Israel is an important ally for that. Now I want to know what your opinion is about the Middle East and US war. After this, I will suggest that you watch this video.